I lost myself. Honestly, it's like my confidence slowly eroded, my self-worth. I think I even experienced depression and I'd lost touch with any dreams or aspirations as well.
Welcome to The Deep Coach, the podcast where we explore the transformational journeys that shape us and that propel us to change the world. I'm your host, Jonathan Ermida, and in each episode, we sit down with those who have journeyed into the depths of spiritual transformation and who are now reshaping the world through their presence and their work. In listening to these incredible human beings, you'll find insight, inspiration, and practical tools that'll support your journey as a coach and as a human being. I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce today's guest, Yasmin Djendel. Yasmin is a faith-led, trauma-informed coach and mindfulness teacher, supporting Muslim women to find their voice and their inner power. Yasmin's story is incredible. Yasmin's birth name is actually Gina, and I'll share more on that in a moment. But Gina was the youngest female factory owner in London by the age of 24, which is absolutely incredible. And a few short years later, she converted to Islam, which is when she changed her name to Yasmin and got married. That marriage was great at first, but things slowly began to deteriorate, and we'll talk more about that in this episode. And we'll also speak about her journey as an entrepreneur, why she decided to convert to Islam, how she navigated that toxic marriage to a narcissist, how she then climbed out of the pain of that marriage after having lost herself along the way, and finally, how she now serves women from a place of deep connection and spiritual truth. There is so much insight and wisdom in this episode. I'm excited for you to listen. Let's dive in. Yasmin, it is so great to be here connected with you today. For those that don't know, you converted to Islam about 32 years ago, and your previous name was Gina. And I'm curious, who was Gina more than 32 years ago?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, sometimes I think about Gina. I think Gina was she was very spiritual, and very career-minded, confident, but very much a loner. I would sometimes just sit on my bedroom windowsill and just gaze out of the window, just probably pondering on the purpose of life or something, but just loved stillness, enjoyed my own company, but as well, very sociable when I wanted to be. Yeah, very sort of career-minded, self-disciplined, always got on with my homework and my studies. And when I did my degree, I had a mortgage. I was working so that I could learn the ropes. And yeah, at the age of 24, I was the youngest female factory owner in London, and I was producing thousands of garments for high street level retailers every single week. So that was sort of Gina, not worrying too much. Didn't have any like self-limiting beliefs, I don't think, at that age. Didn't know they existed. I had my goals, and that was it. It's just like go for them, and nothing bad is going to happen, sort of thing. Maybe a little bit naive, but yeah, I soon saw that the hard way. But yeah. Mm.
Aren't we all naive in our late teens, early 20s?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think Gina would have defined spirituality back then?
It was a little bit confusing, I must say, Jonathan, because my mum, she sent me and my two sisters to a Roman Catholic school. And what she did when she was trying to decide what school to send us to, she actually parked outside many different schools to see how the students left at the end of the day. And we weren't particularly religious. We didn't practice any religion. But she ended up sending us to the Roman Catholic school. And something's just sort of really strange there because like they were trying to, sort of deliver the concept of, 3 in 1. And I really didn't get it. It's like, how can it be 3 in 1? It doesn't make sense to me. And because the cleverest girl in the class, she came from like an Irish family. There's like seven kids, and they're all sort of very religious and went to church on Sundays. And, she was always doing really well in her studies. So I thought, okay, well, I must be stupid. And I think that was always a little bit of a trigger for me as the years went on. But I was like, okay, by the time I left school, I was like, okay, I don't want religion. And I saw a lot of hypocrisy as well, like the head nun. And she was asked to take early retirement because something was happening with school funds. But yeah, by the time I left school, I was like, okay, I don't want religion. I don't want anything to do with religion. I will, I believe in God. And I remember one sort of crazy holiday I had, and I was like, please, God, don't let me die here. So there's always been that connection. I remember going to church, trying to feel something, but also felt quite left out because we were never allowed to take the communion because we never, we weren't allowed to take the bread. But I think the highlight of the day actually was sort of feeling Concord go over the park at like sort of 11 o'clock on the Sunday morning. I think that was actually a highlight. But I was looking for something. I was looking for that peacefulness. I was looking for something that made sense to me, and stopped going to church. When I left school. But yeah, it's about. I said to myself, okay, it's just about being good. But even that, is a very individual thing that, needs to be defined by the creator who created us. On those guidelines, because I got it a bit wrong. But yeah.
How did you become the youngest female-owned factory or owner in London by the age of
Hmm.
24?
Well, when I left school at 15, I worked in a NatWest bank for a year, and then I went to the London College of Fashion, and I studied a diploma there on how to make garments and patterns, and it was all about textiles and stuff like this. And then I got a job straight away in head office for one of the retailers, and I was a garment technologist. So I worked there, and I found it quite interesting. And then I was dealing with manufacturers, and then I was sort of headhunted. I don't think I stayed in a job less than a year. I would be in head offices, manufacturing, and then I went back to then I worked in the Burton Group head office, and then I went back to working for manufacturer, and I was like, okay, I was a roving quality controller, so I was looking after like sort of 13 different factories in and around London. And even thinking of it now, honestly, Jonathan, I can sort of smell the machine oil, the sewing machine. I was like, oh, that's so nice. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. I want to do this. And there was one particular factory who helped me out so, so much. So I left the corporate job. And this is honestly where I still had I had a mortgage, went back to college to do a degree back at the London College of Fashion. But at the same time as well, I was working in a restaurant to try and pay the mortgage. And there was this factory owner who was showing me the ropes for everything. And yeah, I just loved it. And then it's like, okay, I just need to set up my own factory now. That's all I need to do. I feel like I can do this. And because I had so many connections and people trusted me, it wasn't difficult at all to get the work. And but the mistake I made, I got mixed up with the wrong businessmen. So it went a little bit pear shaped, but that's as well like along the lines of that was sort of the main turning point, I think, of like being introduced to like Islam, because I had a lot of Muslim brothers that were working for me. But even before that, there was a factory in East London, and there's a lot of Muslims in East London. And I was managing a tailoring factory. And every lunchtime, I used to see, these guys that go off, come back with their slippers in their hand, and they'd line up and pray. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, that is like so cool. That is like so disciplined. And, just sort of taking those 5-10 minutes out of the day to just get grounded is sort of what I saw it. And I thought it was like really cool. But then I just got on with my everyday life and work, and whatever else. But it wasn't until I actually had the brothers working for me that I was able to sort of ask questions. Yeah.
And what were the sort of questions you were asking, and what were the answers you were receiving?
Do you know what? I think one of the first questions, even 32 years ago, Jonathan, I said to one of the brothers, "Tell me about Palestine. I need to know about Palestine." It was very confusing what's coming out of the news. So yeah, I don't know what the purpose of that was. I really can't sort of even join the dot in a way. Um, But yeah, he explained to me, that there is one God, and that's who we worship. And Jesus was a messenger. I said, okay, that makes sense. He was a man, a good man, and he had a message. And him also was, that there is only one God and worship the one God. So I said, okay, I'm not stupid. It all makes sense now. So yeah, then I was going. There's a place in London, in Hyde Park. It's called Speaker's Corner. People take the opportunity to shout and speak about whatever they feel passionate about. And there was one very knowledgeable brother there. And I remember there was one lady who also converted about that same time. She remembers me sitting on the concrete with like my jeans on and my pink jacket and my pink trainers. I'm just sitting on the floor like cross-legged, listen to the guy, and I'm like, wow. And I think I asked him something about the universe. And I sort of said by that time it was like, okay, if he sort of answers this question to sort of my satisfaction, then I truly believe that Islam is the way of life, and I'll embrace it. Yeah.
And what sort of answers did you receive about the universe?
That it's created. Yeah.
And that was at the time the thing that you needed to hear in order to be like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, there were other things as well. I'd read some books and watched some videos, and so I made sure as well that I studied because I knew there would be 101 questions from my family. I knew they wouldn't be happy. They did think I was brainwashed. And I remember one guy, when he was talking to me, this is before I had my factory, and he was talking to me about Islam. I just sort of said to him, "Listen, I'm English. Okay, you don't talk about religion or money or death. We'll be fine." Right, that was sort of my attitude right at the beginning. But yeah, we say, sort of God softened my heart and guided me. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was knowledge. I had to understand it properly, and I had to be able to foresee like the questions that my family would ask me. And I remember I embraced Islam, and I was still working in the fashion industry, which was so weird as well because 3 weeks after embracing Islam as the declaration of like this is my way of life, I started wearing the hijab, and I was still working in the fashion industry. So if you can imagine, like the busiest, most important street in London, Oxford Street, the center of all fashion, and I had to go to this huge, big, open office for one of the head offices, and I didn't realize that people didn't like Muslims. Honestly, it didn't even occur to me. And I walked into this office with my newfound identity, and I was really sort of proud, head up, shoulders back. But everybody's head just turned and stared at me, and it didn't even bother me. Honestly, I thought, okay, whatever. And I had my meeting with the sort of like a co-manager sort of thing, and I left. But yeah, they didn't like me to be Muslim, and actually the company I was working for, although they were so pleased with my work and like before I was Muslim, and they even phoned me one day and said, look, we're going to give you like a salary increase, we're going to give you another £1,000. And obviously that was a lot in those days. Like, okay, this is great because I'm very organized and I do my work, with due diligence. Um, but yeah, and then shortly after that, I became Muslim, and like they found so many sort of different reasons to sort of get rid of me. But it was okay as well. They gave me like a month's salary, and I was married at that point as well. So it was like, okay, my husband said to me, "Oh, I didn't want to tell you to stop work, but I really don't want my wife working." I was okay. You've got to look after me now. Yeah.
Yeah, I have so many questions I want to double click into here. One of the things that's interesting is that you went from being visually the majority, so you blended in, into
Mm.
London, you looked like everybody else, into visibly the minority, right? And so you started to
Mm.
feel the eyes gazing differently at you. You mentioned that it didn't bother you. Was it? Did it maintain that way? Was it an easy transition for you in that regard?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, because I don't really let people bother me. Um, yeah, I didn't really though. I remember going to the market once with my friend, and the lady saying, because I used to make my own clothes and stuff like this, and she said to me, "How many meters do you want?" I looked at my friend. I said, "What do you reckon? Like 3 should be enough." I think I probably tried to put on a London accent as much as possible, and I like 3. Do you think that'd be all right? And the woman was like, "Oh." But yeah, I never had any problems at all, really. Yeah,
And
yeah.
what was it like communicating to your family about the transition?
Well, they were a little bit shocked. It was really difficult with my mum, honestly, Jonathan, because even though I had a really good relationship with my mum and we used to go shopping, but she hardly spoke to me for like a whole year. That was hard. That was hard. And I think I started wearing the hijab, it was just maybe a couple of months before Christmas. So much of the family sort of hadn't seen me. And then we had like this sort of Christmas gathering. And I turned up, with the hijab on. And they were like, oh my God, like what's happened? But I was also I was able to communicate very eloquently why I'd made the decision. And so they were really cool with it. They were really fine. And something my husband always used to say is, just be patient and time will tell. And that was a main thing really with my children, because my children have grown. I've got 4 children and they're absolutely wonderful. And I think it's really a lot to do with our values and our beliefs. Because even, like in the teenage years, I didn't need, the babysitter was God. I just used to say to them, remember, God sees what you see and hears what you hear. And that was enough. That was enough. And it wasn't, they used to do some crazy things, yeah, but never anything outside of the religion. So I never had any problems with like drugs or alcohol or gangs or girlfriends and all of this sort of stuff. And they're just grown up to be very polite, kind, generous, supportive human beings, part of the society. And we say alhamdulillah, we say, like, praise be to God. All three of them are engineers. My daughter, she's married with three children, and it's very nice. We laugh together, and yeah, we have really amazing times together. It's just the best company ever, alhamdulillah.
That's so beautiful. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. This is obviously all generalities are stereotypes, but English women tend to be strong-willed, independent-minded, have, kind of a mind of their own. And to go from that to then your husband saying, good, I don't want my wife working. Was that a transition for you, or was it easy then to give over to, that part of the culture?
Well, it wasn't even that really straightforward, because then we opened a factory of our own in North London. We opened another factory. So we were just running that together, and his brother was over here as well. So that my husband's family, they're all tailors. So yeah, we just opened another factory, and it wasn't until, oh God, that's another long story, honestly. So he's from Algeria. So the first time we went to Algeria, and I think we spent a couple of weeks. First time I met his family, all that sort of thing. And then, so we had this factory up and running, and we just took that break. And at the airport, when we was in Nigeria, coming back to London, he said to me, "If anything happens, just go without me." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And yeah, the military police, they took him away, and I was pregnant at that time, and I cried the entire flight on the way home. And I was like, please, please, please. And he's like, the officer was like, no, this is Algeria. You don't understand. Like, so stern and so harsh. And I got back to London. My house had been burgled. And honestly, I had to close down the business, sold some of the machinery, moved into a new place, moved some machines in with me. Had to go back to Algeria to get him to sign something while he was still in this like prison. Yeah, we have, and what they say is that, when you first become Muslim, you will be tested. So yeah, I think, before that even, I think I had a miscarriage as well. So yeah, there were plenty of tests about that time. But he managed to get back, I think it was about a month before I had my daughter. Yeah.
How
Yeah,
did
and
you
that was,
meet your
I
husband?
didn't, he worked in one of the factories that I was, like, quality controller for. So yeah, because he was such an expert tailor, he used to be like their sample machinist. So I just used to have to like deal with him, because we used to have to get like a perfect garment to send to the retailer.
Mm.
So yeah, I was yeah, but his English wasn't very good, and he used to be like really annoying. But yeah, I remember when I closed the factory down, and I was actually sort of homeless at that time, and I went to my uncle's, and it felt like a sort of 1920s film. I didn't feel welcome there, and I just remember being in his spare room, and it's also this browny colours, old furniture, and I just said, okay, I don't want to go back to the life I had, and I know Islam is the truth. But the weird thing was, it's like, if I accept, Islam as my way of life, it's like he's on that path. And I didn't differentiate between, okay, he doesn't have to be on that path. And we say, okay, well, that was sort of what was written for me. And yeah, I don't know what happened. Some things are just such a blur, honestly. But yeah, we got married, and things were really good for a while. But yeah.
How did you go from owning multiple factories to being almost homeless?
Because the apartment that I had bought, it was really such a beautiful apartment, and did a lot of work to it, and it was looking so beautiful. But I actually rented it out, because my factory was sort of more in London, and the apartment was West London. So I was renting it out, and so I couldn't go there when I wanted to. And as well, I mean, again, it's like things that I didn't know at the time, things that I just sort of know differently now. But a lot of people were saying to me, "Oh, mortgage is haram. It's forbidden. It's all it's interest based. You're not allowed it." So I was like, okay, this is my beautiful apartment that I've done a lot of work for, and this is Islam. And I again, I just chose Islam, and I gave the keys back to the bank and walked away from it. Which apparently I didn't even have to, because obviously I got the mortgage before I was Muslim. But I sensed something as well from my husband that something didn't feel quite right there as well, that he sort of didn't want me to have anything of my own. And it wasn't until sort of years later that I realized there was a lot of control. As long as everything was going his way, then everything was fine. So, it was okay to sort of work in the factory and, like work all the hours and maybe not necessarily sort of cook proper meals at the end of the day. But as long as everything was going well for him, then everything would sort of run properly. And I just sort of learned to sort of fit into that without questioning it. But yeah, that sort of attitude, it didn't really work well for, in the end, because there was too much control, and that
Yeah.
got worse over the years. Yeah.
What was your relationship to yourself like during those difficult years?
Oh my God, Jonathan, I think I lost myself. Honestly. It's like my confidence slowly eroded, my self-worth. I think I even experienced depression, and I'd lost touch with any dreams or aspirations as well. Um, I was still, I don't know, I was still sort of my bubbly, positive self, like in a lot of situations. And at one point, because my children, they were going to like a private school, they asked me to teach English there. But we had a big house, and I didn't want to take too much on, and I sort of said to the head teacher, I said, "Look, I'll work 4 days a week." He said, "Oh my God, you're going to cause me so much trouble with the other teachers." And I said, "Well, I'm the kids' chauffeur, I'm the cleaner, I'm the cook, the psychologist, the mentor, and everything else like this." I said, "I can't do like 5 days." But I did actually quite a bit of consultancy work in the school, just sort of talking to the teachers. They gave me full run of the school, because I was on the PTA with the Parent Teacher Association. And so I just had free run of the school, and I could talk to students, teachers. I could ask about their teaching approaches and all this sort of stuff. So I did quite a bit of consulting for free. I just really enjoyed it, and I think I sort of got back in touch with who Gina was, who the ambitious person was, who that person was that wanted to make an impact. Absolutely loved it. And then I just sort of go home again to, there's sometimes, the silent treatment, the criticism, the judgments. And yeah, it was sort of a bit of a double life. And when I would, sort of was at home a lot, or he was around, and it really did sort of wear down on me. It really did. Yeah.
What was the relationship with, or I guess how were the children processing that fracture of a relationship? Because as we know, children absorb everything in the environment.
Yeah. Yes, they did. Absolutely do. I think I put on such a brave face. Most of the time, I was just showing up as that strong woman, who could deal with anything, had the strength to deal with anything. And I didn't want to have any weakness, because I knew that if there was some weakness there, then my children would sort of, it would be detrimental towards them rather than them seeing anything. But yeah, as they got older, and he was a bit of a workaholic, so sometimes he wasn't around much. And I gave up on saying, "You wait till your father comes home," because there was just no point ever saying that. So I just learned that, okay, I need to deal with everything. I felt like sort of a single married mum. I had to deal with everything. But yeah, like I say to my daughter, like, so what do you remember about, those sort of days when you were young? And she said, "Oh, I just remember sometimes you was like a bit impatient sometimes," but yeah, I think I was quite good at, like, just sort of on the outside keeping it all together. But on the inside, I was exhausted. I was confused. I was lonely. It was a really hard time.
What was the breaking point for you finally?
Realizing that I woke up one morning and I hated who I'd become. And then as well, I said, okay, this is what depression must feel like. Just sort of moving my food around the plate. I didn't want to go out. And I said, like, nobody should have that much control over somebody else's mental well-being. And it was about the same time that I came across free online learning. Somebody had sort of introduced me to that, and I was like, okay, I love studying, and I hadn't even sort of, done much of that over the years, because, everything gets put on the top shelf when you have, like kids. I was going to say so many kids, but I could have done with more. The more than four would have been fine. So yeah, I started just studying, and that used to sort of offend him as well because I think he felt really threatened. Then I started teaching English as a second language to the neighbours. I got a job in a school. Then I became financially independent as well, and the kids absolutely loved it because they used to have to beg for anything, any money, and I used to just give them. And even then, when they talk about their best days of school and stuff like this, they say, "Oh, it was when Umi had money, and she used to just give us money, and we used to just love it." Yeah, because on the outside, everything looked brilliant. Everything looked so perfect, honestly, Johnny. We lived in a big villa. We drove expensive cars. The kids were in private school with the best clothes. Everybody, I mean, it's really, I mean, I didn't know that people were just sort of talking about us. But because I like to be humble, and I like the kids to be humble as well. But obviously, on the inside, everything was a little bit different, and there was a lot of financial control. So even on the outside, everything looked really amazing. The kids, they knew that there was something not quite right. So they were going to school with like diplomats, the kids of diplomats and very rich children, but they fit in and they were fine and they were confident. And as soon as my eldest son was old enough to drive a car, my husband bought him a car, and so he would go like racing off with his friends and stuff like this. But yeah, they really just got on with it and kept busy. Yeah.
So, in what ways did online learning begin to support you and change you?
Yeah, I started studying anything, honestly, change management, anything that had a little bit of interest. And then I said, okay, there's got to be like an aim for the studying. So that's when, and then what happened as well, my middle son wanted to leave the school that he was at because he was like, I just feel they're going to chuck me out because different things were going on. The head teacher's son was in his class, and he was sort of a little bit untouchable, but very disruptive. And he's like, I can't stand this. They're very ethical children. And he's like, I'm going to say something, and it's going to be the wrong thing to say, and then they're going to chuck me out. I said, okay, you know what it means, though? It means that we're going to home educate. So he was like, okay. I said, well, go and pray for guidance and come back to me, and go and pray again and come back to me. So that was it. We made the decision to take them out of the school. The older two had left by that time, and took the middle one and the youngest one. And the youngest one didn't want to leave school at all. He absolutely loved it. But, I couldn't be teaching one at home and then driving the other one to school. So I home educated them through their early teens. And it was, again, a very difficult period of time because there wasn't the money there for like resources. There was money there for, cashmere coats and expensive shoes, but there wasn't the money for like the resources for the kids to study properly. So again, it was very challenging. And then I think what kept me going, actually, Jonathan, is every summer I would come back to my mum's house, and we would go on picnics, go to the museums, go to parks, and that was just sort of the thing that kept us all going, really. And so we were in London one year, and my friend said to me, oh, my son's going to this engineering college. So I said, okay, let's go to the open evening. And my oldest son, who'd left school by that time, we all went, and we had a look around, and there was like this amazing machinery, and they made it sound like absolutely amazing. It was London design and engineering. And he said to me, why didn't you send me to a school like this? And I was like, okay, that's it. That's a turning point. So we talked about it, and we said, okay, let's get the two youngest in the engineering school, college. And they did absolutely amazing. They did really, really well. It was very difficult first. The transition for them was very, very difficult. And I just had to keep saying, trust me, trust me, trust me. And yeah, they finished their GCSEs, their A levels, they got apprenticeships. And yeah, they were really liked at the school. They were given a lot of privileges, a lot of responsibility. And it was really good. They really just sort of stood out as like really sort of decent people, I could say. Yeah.
What impact did Carol Dweck's work have both on you and it seems like your kids? You shared with me that you were
Mm.
teaching some of those principles to them.
Yeah, because honestly, Jonathan, I saw in them that what they believed their abilities to be were very different to what I believed their abilities were. So that's when I did a whole presentation for them on Carol Dweck's growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And it really got me thinking about my mindset as well, and about self-limiting beliefs and negative thought patterns and how they impact effort, which is obviously going to impact the results and the outcomes. So I did that for them, and it got me really thinking about myself. And that's when it was at the same time that I signed up for the TEFL course. And because I was always looking for a bargain, There was one that had 2 free mindfulness courses. I was like, okay, the mind. I'm really curious about the mind right now. So that's when I signed up for the mindfulness courses, and felt I don't know, like quite skeptical at first. But I just approached it with a very much an open mind and an open heart, which I do most things. And yeah, they just had such a profound impact on all areas of my life. Just that first thing of like quietening my mind, because felt like my mind was tuned into 100 different radio stations, like most of the time. And I didn't know it was a thing that I could turn down the volume or turn it off altogether, or even, just like become curious and just tune into one of those radio stations and think about, okay, what is actually being said here? It was just a lot of noise, and I was just trying to block it out because it was all too much. It was too much. My main thing was just block it out. But yeah, the mindfulness was so profound, just quietening in my mind that first time, and just realizing that actually my environment is pretty quiet and peaceful. And I said, okay, if I could do it once, I can do it again. And then I realized I actually then had a choice about what sort of thoughts I wanted to think about, and nobody knew what my thoughts were. So instead of sort of feeling guilty about feeling happy, which is really sad when I think back, to feel guilty about feeling happy. And I remember thinking, okay, well, next week I'm going to my friend's house for coffee. And I started to feel happy about that. And I was like, oh my God, like what if somebody knows, like that I'm sort of happy. And it was really funny as well, because I remember even with the meditations at first, it would sort of be like one eye open, one eye closed, not to get caught. Because, which obviously defeats the whole object of a meditation. And it's, I'd be sitting there and, it's like he'd come in like, what are you doing? I'm just sitting here, nothing. So I remember it was so challenging. So the first thing was I was very, very restless. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to my mum's for the summer, and I will be able to practice this course that I'd signed up for. And so first of all, I remember I was falling asleep within seconds. The kids were asleep. It was like 10 o'clock at night. It was all peaceful. I was like, now's my chance to study this course. I really want to know more about it. And so the professor would start his, curiosity of breath meditation. 2 seconds, my chin was on my chest. I'd be snoring away, and this happened like 3 nights in a row. I'm like, I'm never going to get this. But I think what happens with the meditation is like, it's about becoming familiar with what is, isn't it, Jonathan? And it's like, I was tired, and I needed to sleep. And so after about 3 days, I was able to sort of stay awake and listen to the meditations. And then when we came back to London, I remember there was another thing. It's like, because I was so restless, I couldn't sit still, and my body was like so jittery. And I was like, okay, I'm in charge. Just shut up. I'm not listening to you. Because like, you're like, get up and do what you always do. And you're always like hyperactive, and, you've got that adrenaline in you. And I was like, no, shut up. I'm going to see this through. So yeah, I think, and I'm so glad that I persevered with it. I'm so glad, because then, the healing led to purpose. And, it's now that I help other women. I specialize in helping women that have been through challenging relationships, but it's not just that. It's about stress, anxiety, overthinking, the negative thoughts. Even a few women I've worked with, their battle is actually, with themselves. There hasn't sort of been anything, or anybody in particular. It's just a build-up of life, and we tend to, cling on to the negative thoughts, the negative comments, and events, more than the positive. So yeah, it's been a journey. It really has.
It really has. What's incredible is how your life has been a series of, I guess all of our lives are this way, these micro decisions that lead to the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's quite serendipitous, even though sometimes the thread that we're following sometimes leads to a difficult situation, but yet if we persevere through that, it leads to something else and then something else.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's good as well, like to teach our kids these lessons as well. And I think one of my sort of top parenting tips is, never feel sorry for your kids, really, because they are where they're meant to be as much as we are where we're meant to be. Okay, so I remember it was sort of a few years after coming back to London, and my youngest son, and remember he didn't want to leave the school that he was at abroad, and he said to me, he said, you know what, this I want to tell you something. I said, okay, take a deep breath. He said to me, four things I absolutely hated that you put me through. I was like, okay. He said, you took me out of the Saudi school, you home educated me, then you brought me back to London, And then you sent me to like a school where there's hardly any Muslims. I was like, okay. And then he said, but it all turned out all right. Oof. I was like, okay, thank you. And he's actually such a very wise young man. He really is. So yeah, it's like, you look back and you join the dots and you've just got to like take that deep breath. And I remember as well, like another deep breath I took was there was a really like a high level mindfulness course, and I'd just come back to London. I had like £20 in my bank account with the promise that more money was coming, and I was on Udemy, and this course was like £15. And I remember I had my credit card, £20 in that only leaves me £5. And my finger was like, shall I, shan't I, shall I, shan't I? And I was like, I really want to do this. I really want to know more about this mindfulness and meditation and stuff. And I was like, buy, yes. And I just hit that buy button. And it took me about 6 months to finish that course. But again, I'm just so glad that I did it. And the money comes and goes, Jonathan. It does. And this is why we need sort of belief, we need trust, we need to have the certainty that God is going to make everything work out. And it's like close your eyes, with some foresightedness, obviously, because there's some people that jump off the cliff and then start waving their arms and legs around, with no foresightedness whatsoever. Everything is quite sort of well thought out. But yeah, you've got to just do these things sometimes. You've just got to trust your intuition and dare to do.
Dare to do. Yeah.
Mm,
From my own experience in life and also, just being around so many people, supporting so many people, I
mm,
have recognized that we whenever we're at the cliff's edge and we think there's no more, like you said, a lot of people start flailing. They maybe jump off and they're flailing their arms and they're like, oh my God, where's the ground? Where's the ground?
mm, mm.
What I've noticed is that if we stay patient, if we stay focused, if we stay here and
Yeah,
now, everything gets figured out.
yeah.
I don't know if you have watched Indiana Jones. I forget which of the ones it is, but there this movie where he needs to cross. He's looking for the Holy Grail, and he needs to cross the precipice, the
Mm,
chasm, and he doesn't see anything. There's a drop that he can't see the bottom of, and basically he takes the leap, right? The
mm,
what the
yeah.
takes that step, and
Mm,
trusting that there will be ground there. Life sometimes feels that way. It feels like
mm,
there's a chasm that we're going to fall into, but if we continue to trust and stay rooted into who we are and to what life is
mm.
asking of us,
Yeah,
there's always something there, I found.
yeah, absolutely. And as well, when you think about it as well, Jonathan, I mean, apart from taking that sort of death leap, um, they're only small steps, so we can't
Yeah.
go far wrong as well. So it is important to have that intentionality. Is like, okay, it's a small step, really.
Yeah.
And what's the worst can happen? No, go for it. Sometimes you have to just go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say are the mechanisms of meditation and mindfulness that allowed for the healing to occur within you?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. I think it's about strengthening. The main thing I would say is having the ability to strengthen the attention muscle. So choosing what to focus on for as long as you want to focus on something. So there's nothing special about the breath. We're just using it as an anchor, to bring our focus of attention to. So it's about, when you notice your mind has wandered, just gently bring it back again. So practicing that. And then I realized in my prayer, because as Muslims, we pray 5 times a day. But when I was like really stressed and anxious and I was walking on eggshells and all this sort of stuff was going on, my prayer was really hugely like negatively impacted. And I would just have all of these thoughts going over past conversations, thinking about what mood people were going to be in. And as well, because I was so restless, as soon as I finished my prayer, I would just jump up again. And I think with the meditation, I had to train myself to be able to sit still for a length of time. And even now, I sort of pat myself on the back if I do like a 20-minute meditation, because it's still quite an achievement. Because I'm still like very energetic, but very positively energetic now, alhamdulillah. But I think that was it was a real game changer for me with regards to my spirituality. That's been like a byproduct because I had high blood pressure and all of that is settled. And another thing that I noticed as well that was really sort of profound is, I mean, you probably might not know, but sometimes when we're cooking we can sort of nip our finger with a knife. And I remember when I was really stressed, Jonathan, it used to get swollen, sometimes infected. It used to take like a couple of weeks to heal. But when I started, the regular sort of mindfulness and meditation really sort of coming down, like we know that it boosts the immune system. And so if I ever did sort of nip myself, which I didn't do as much because I was sort of more present, honestly, 2 days and it'd be gone. And I'm like, wow, it sounds really sort of, I don't know, strange to some people, but this is something else that I noticed. So I think my spiritual journey, because of practicing the meditation, so I saw the meditation as a practice ground, and my prayer was actually sort of going for gold. And so I was able to sort of create that sort of deeper, more meaningful connection with my creator. And that's just like the sweetness of faith is the best thing ever. And also learning that, along the way, and it's something that I sort of said recently, because I was, on a television interview, and like what would my advice be? It would be love God more than you love any other human.
Mm.
And this is something really important to keep in mind as well. And like do your good deeds, thinking about like what you're sending forward. But like just being present with my kids. If I'm working, sending an email or something like that, they'd be talking to me, and I'd either just close the device completely or say to them, oh, I just finished this sentence and I'll get back to you. It just gives you that intentionality. You don't have to get flustered. Just more composed, as opposed to trying to multitask. You're pretending to listen, but the kids, they know. And you know what, when you close that device, you see their facial expression change and the whole body language change, that they feel that they're important. So this is how, again, the mindfulness meditation, it's helped to improve my relationships and my health, like I said, my spirituality and my focus. So actually reading a book, and because we have this ability of metacognition, so we can think about what we're thinking about, we can still be solving the world's problems, and be reading, but we're not going to comprehend anything. And it's again about noticing that and bringing your focus of attention back again to what you are choosing to focus on.
Yeah. How did you move from practitioner to provider and supporting women in the way that you do?
Yeah, that's honestly, thinking back, if I knew how challenging it would be to have an online coaching business, I would have probably backed out. But it is what it is. So I came back to London about 6 years ago, and I said to my best friend, I said, oh my God, I've been practicing these mindfulness, these tools and techniques, and they've had such a profound impact on my life. I want to share them. So I talked to her a little bit more about the transformation and how they've helped me. So we got like 9 women together, and they were like different ages. They had different issues, different traumas, different things of going through it in life. And so I said, okay, you're like, I just want to share these with you, and I want you to have like a better quality of life. And I was sort of creating the course as I was going along, although it was based on mindfulness-based stress reduction and CBT. I just wanted to put that Islamic perspective to it as well. And so when we got to like week 5, all of the women were experiencing breakthroughs. And I said, okay, Yasmin, you need to get this out to the big wide world, because, women always used to come to me for, advice and support. And I knew a lot of the problems and the issues that they were dealing with. And a lot of things is really down to, the negative thoughts. And I mean, I remember one client, and she said to me, oh my God, like the voice is so loud. And I said, okay, whose voice is it? She went, it's my father's. I said, okay, he's not with you anymore. But it's not until we choose to really focus, because we have as humans, we don't want to tune into anything that's unpleasant. But with the mindfulness, it's okay. You're in a safe space. Nothing's going to happen to you if you turn towards that unpleasantness. So it's absolutely remarkable. So yeah, I saw the sisters through the 8-week program, and there was things. There was childhood trauma. There was one. She was one of 7 siblings, and her mum just got up and left one day. There was another one. She was multitasking. Her husband had her in a right sort of whiz, and doing 100 different things at one time. And the mindfulness practice of present moment awareness, where you're just choosing to do one task at a time. So her whole life just sort of calmed down. My friend, she suffers from Crohn's disease, which sort of triggered by stress. So she was able to, even when she had like pain, she was able to sort of turn towards the pain and take some deep breaths. So it's been really profound. So I was like, okay, how do I get this online? So then I was researching. That was probably going to be your next question, but I was researching and I was like, okay, how do I do this? And I found, coaching program that I sort of found was a little bit suitable, and but it cost £2,000, and I didn't have that money. And my eldest son, said to me, Umi is like Arabic for my mum. Even though I'm English, I like the Arabic. And he said to me, Umi, I believe in you, and here's the money. I was like, oh my God, wow, somebody believes in me, really. And so that's where it sort of started. So I was on that coaching program that taught coaches how to get online. They said to me, turn left, I turned left. They said, turn right, I turned right. All of these things that I'd never done before, like setting up a website, setting up sales funnels and integration and email marketing and all of those things. I remember, I probably went a little bit more grey those days. But it's been absolutely worth it. It really has. It really has. But I think as well, like it was a very harsh program, and I did experience burnout. And I had to just sort of take a step back and say, look, this is not the life of a Muslim woman. We have to keep everything on the balance. And for anybody anyway, is really just keep life on the balance. You've got your family, you've got your home, you've got yourself, you need to take care of yourself. But they were very much, oh, you need to, post 3 times a day, and you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. And it was so, so exhausting. That I took a bit of a break. I think I took about 2 months break, and studied. I was told not to do anything, but I studied more about coaching. But yeah, again, like all these turning points. I had a mentor at that time. There was another guy from America who was on the same course as I was. Absolutely amazing coach. So he coached me a little bit as well, and it was quite strange because so I had the coach and I had the mentor, and they were both saying to me, they didn't know each other, but they were both saying to me, "What's wrong, Yasmin? What's wrong? You're keeping so much inside." I'm like, no, 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 I'm fine. I help other Muslim women, And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like such a hypocrite because I'm keeping so much inside still. So yeah, I called it sort of dancing with my dragons.
Mhm.
Mysterious and sort of quite an eye opener. But yeah, I had to sort of dance with a few more dragons, which is also, it's good for us. We need to do it. We need to do it. We need to um, go a little bit deeper sometimes. Yeah. So that was also quite intriguing and enlightening. Yeah.
What were you keeping inside?
That um, I was an emotionally abused wife, and that was a hard label. That was such a hard label to give myself, and especially because I had my younger sister. She died about seven years ago, but we got on really, really well. I never laughed with anybody more than I laughed with my younger sister, and she respected me, and she sort of put me on a pedestal, like far too much more than what I was worth. And I thought, oh my God, if she knew the truth, she'd be so disappointed in me. She'd be so disappointed. And so again, I was like sort of keeping that brave face, pretending that everything was okay, and let's go for a picnic and stuff like this. But yeah, that was the thing that was sort of holding me back. But then COVID happened, and by the grace of God, my husband was stuck in his country, and I was in London with my kids. And it was actually 2 years that I didn't see him, but it was it was such an eye opener. I felt really like, oh my God, this is what peace feels like. This is what peace of mind feels like. So I had the mindfulness and meditation skills. I was teaching it, but still something, obviously sort of going on. And I didn't want to divorce. I didn't want to be a divorced woman. And with my mindfulness meditation skills, I was really, I was able to sort of let go. I was able to not engage in any arguments or, like get triggered. Even when he tried to trigger me, I was so aware of like, okay, I can feel something, like tingling in my tummy. And I was really able to stay so composed. And he's like, oh, that wouldn't bother you. That wouldn't bother you. And I'm like, "Oh, really?" So I just learned how to deal with his personality traits, shall we say. And, if he'd go on about things, we'd go for a walk and he'd go on and on and on. And I'd be like, oh, wow, look at the shape of that tree. I'd be saying to myself, and just notice that, his voice sort of dwindled away. I just wasn't, willing to engage in any arguments. And that was very liberating. But on the other hand as well, he couldn't handle the new me. He want, like people like that, they want to argue, they want to drain you. And I was like, had this protection around me, and he wasn't getting in there at all. So yeah, he's sort of, without knowing that he was going to obviously get, that there was going to be lockdowns and stuff. He was like, "Oh, go back to my country." So okay, bye. Um, but yeah, that time I really experienced peace of mind, and that was very, very beautiful. And then I realized, oh my God, like when the kids say to me, "Oh, he's coming back," and I'd near enough have some sort of panic attack, just the thought of going through all that sort of trauma again. And I remember my middle son, he said to me, "I don't like the way you react when we tell you that, our father's coming." And I said, "Look, excuse me for a little while. Yeah, it's called adulthood trauma. I've been through a lot with your father and I know how to deal with it. And it's fine. I'm feeling better already. If he wants to come back, he can come back." But that was also another turning point because I just, just sort of praying to God that, to sort of expose him, who he really was, because the kid's like, "No, you can't divorce him." Okay, for my kids, I'll stick it out. But I was also like praying. I said, "God, just expose him, and guide me." So he was coming back one weekend, and I was like, "Okay, I should be the good wife, and I should, make sure he's got nice meals, and I should be very pleasant." And yeah, God exposed him, for what sort he really is, and the kids have seen, sort of through it all as well. So yes, he, again, he left again, but that time, I think it was the time before that actually, it just sort of felt really abandoned because everything seemed okay. But like I said, looking back, I realized that he couldn't handle the real me that, that sort of attracted me to him in the first place. They sort of turn you into these sort of monsters, and they don't like that either. And then when they lose control, they don't like that either. And they just don't know what to do with all of their sort of insecurities. So yeah, I've I'm very happy. I'm very content. I'm very well grounded. Just love the company of my kids, and everything just works out. Everything just works out, and it's all very sort of peaceful. Yeah.
Yeah, everything does always work out. How did finally owning I guess, the reality of having been an emotionally abused wife help you in your coaching and sort of being more seen and putting yourself more out there?
Yeah, I didn't like to put myself out there because I still had probably some doubts about who I was and what I wanted to do. And I think from the Islamic perspective as well, I didn't want to show up. I didn't want to talk about my life. I didn't want to talk about my problems. And I wasn't going to be like other women online who exposed everything. So I was always very apprehensive about, sort of showing up and doing videos. Absolutely hated doing any lives. But I set up a Facebook group. It was private. And as I got to know the women a lot more, I was doing regular lives like every single week, just doing regular lives. But to feel that maybe my husband was watching or his family were watching or the neighbors where I used to live were watching, I couldn't do it. But I am very transparent, and the women. I understand the women's issues because obviously I've been through so much myself. So it all helps. We need, when that healing turns into purpose, that's when we could go through it all again. We could just go through it all again. It's okay because it's got purpose. It's got absolute purpose. So yeah.
Yeah. How did you end up building an almost 10,000 person following on LinkedIn?
Wow. Yeah. I think it's about creating quality content. It's about creating quality content and reaching out. It's difficult to spin all the plates, isn't it, Jonathan? You want to comment, you want to DM, you want to, connect with new people. And I think it's just, sort of finding those little pockets of time, maybe even in the week, not necessarily, a daily thing. And really wanting to know who is in my audience. So, DMing people and say, do you want a coffee chat? I'd love to get to know about your work a bit more and about what you do. And, and again, we look back and we join the dots, Jonathan, because it's because I have all those followers that I'm able to sort of run a charity, and people trust me. And I said, okay, because I think last year I was sort of really struggling with the coaching, and I said, okay, if that's the only good thing that's sort of come out from all of this sort of hard work, is that people trust me, then that's good for me. I can actually sort of grab that and run with that because it's quite the opposite of my husband. We've actually sort of got bad reputation or whatever. Don't want to say too much. But yeah, that really sort of meant a lot to me. It really meant a lot. It was reaching out and quality content and replying to people and just getting to know who's in your audience.
Yeah. What's the most difficult part for any coach that might be aspiring coach that might be listening to this? What's the most difficult part of building a coaching practice from the ground up?
Hmm, good question. It's like, in a way, it's like a thousand-piece jigsaw puzzle, and it's like, don't get overwhelmed. Just do those little bits, and we can't start at step 17. We have to go through those other 16 steps, and it's all character building stuff, as I tell my kids. It's all character building stuff, and just do whatever you're capable of doing. If you like working on a website, just learn how to do it. And if you can only spend like half an hour a day, spend half an hour a day. At least you're taking those small steps in the right direction. But quality content is really important as well. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of plates to spin. There really are a lot of plates to spin. But yeah, it's very fulfilling. It's very rewarding when you see the transformation, of the women. And 80 women have been through my coaching program now. And I think many more, probably hundreds or thousands more, impacted by the good quality content. And I've written a couple of ebooks. I like to record meditations as well that sometimes sort of appropriate for the time. So Ramadan, I recorded a very special meditation, and just sharing it. Just keep sharing and give as much as you can give. Be of service. Ask people, how can I help you? How can I support you? Mm.
Fantastic. You're doing such important work across the board in all aspects of your life. If you had an opportunity to go back in time and have a conversation with Gina when she was 20, what advice might you give her? What might you tell her?
The first thing that's coming to mind, Jonathan, is really sort of be careful who you marry.
Mm.
Yeah, be careful who you marry. Like have a bit more thought about that. And obviously I don't regret, because I've got 4 amazing children, really, really amazing children. And things are what they're supposed to be. But I would probably I wish I'd thought about that a bit more, a bit better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. If you could leave listeners with a piece of advice or something to reflect on their own transformational journeys, what might that be?
Never give up. There is always light at the end of the tunnel, and we are where we're supposed to be. And growth happens in those moments where we are struggling. Just put your trust in God, and take action. We're not victims. I absolutely refuse to believe that any of us are like sort of victims. It's all about where we are now, and this is what I love about the mindfulness. And that it really aligns with our Islamic values, is that you are where you are, and move forward. Move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
seek help as well. I think that's really important. You don't have to struggle on your own. Like, just seek help from somebody that you trust, somebody who understands what you're going through. I think this is really important as well. If anybody has experienced a narcissistic relationship, whether that's a parent, a sibling, or spouse, you need to go somebody who understands narcissistic personality traits, because when we hear ourselves saying some of the issues, it sounds so pathetic, and that's what's really confusing about it, because it's there's a saying, isn't it, sort of death by a thousand cuts sort of thing.
mm,
So yeah, if there's anybody sort of experiencing narcissistic personality traits, and even one client I have now, it's her workplace is actually very, very toxic, and I just got a message from her a little while ago today, and she said, oh, honestly, Yasmin, if it hadn't been for your guidance and your support, I never would have been so bold the other day, and putting the healthy boundaries and being well grounded and taking a deep breath. So yeah, it's profound work that we do. And yeah, coaches, I'd have a coach in every area of my life, honestly. Apart from the fact that I'm quite self-disciplined, I think, oh no, I don't need a coach for that. I'm actually doing it all right. Um, but yeah, coaches are amazing people, really.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yasmin, you're such a strong, powerful, inspiring woman. We connected by the grace of God. It was serendipity. You know how these things happen. It's quite interesting. Both
Yeah,
the outreach and then the response and then the back and forth and then getting to this
yeah,
point. And I'm just so grateful to be connected with you and to learn from you and to have our greater community learn from you, because you have a lot to teach and a lot to share, and your life is a testament to the human spirit, and I
Mm.
just want to thank you for your time and space here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jonathan. If I just want to just add one other thing as well, because I know we've all been sort of brainwashed, with regards to Islam. And Islam is one thing and it's perfect and it's from the Creator. And Muslims, we're just people. We make mistakes. We're sinful. We're weak. So yeah, just to sort of keep in mind that there's a huge difference between Islam and Muslims, but it's such a beautiful way of life. It really is. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't leave it or anything. I want to know more. I want to do more, and it's made me a much better person. Yeah.
I see that. I see that. Can you briefly describe the difference between Islam and being a Muslim?
Like I said, Islam is the truth. We know, like, the Quran is the word of God. There's no mistakes in it. The guidance is there. The healing is there. The mercy is there. And when God created mankind, he also created, like, the devils. And when God gave honor to a human, the devil said, "What, you've made this from dirt? I'm much more superior. You made me from fire." Um, so the devil promised that he would take as many people to hell as he could, and then God promised, "Okay, but not my believers." Not my believers. And we have as well the best role model that ever existed, Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We say peace and blessings be upon him. He was the best role model. And when I think of it as well, like, he was, the sort of mindfulness skills as well. He was the most present. He was, had that awareness of self, others, and the world around him. He was very composed and very kind, compassionate. And so that's, like, we want to be more like him. And I feel like as well with the mindfulness skills, I feel like I can sort of be more like the best role model ever created.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yasmin, thank you again for sharing all your insights, your wisdom,
Thank
and your
you.
presence with us. Thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about today's guest, visit our podcast landing page at www.podcast.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. You'll find links to their website, social media, and anything else they might want to share there. And if you're curious to explore more about our work, our trainings, or the deep coaching approach, you'll find everything at www.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. A new episode of this podcast releases every 2 weeks, so please subscribe wherever you listen to stay up to date. Until next time, stay present, embrace love, and continue sensing into what life is calling you toward. See you soon.